In this week's Torah portion, Moses commands the Israelites, upon entering the Promised Land, to recognize God's gifts to them with these words, "V'ata hinei heveti et reshit pri ha'adama asher natata li Adonai." Because of your gifts, I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, Adonai, have given me. He further instructs each Israelite to dedicate a tenth part of the produce of his field to the support of the priest, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. Our honored guest speaker this evening, Israeli Consul General for the New England region, Yehuda Yaakov, as an Oleh to Israel in 1983, clearly brought to the state of Israel and to the Jewish people the first fruits of his energy, intellect, and skill. He brings to the position of Consul General of Israel to New England more than 2 decades of experience in public diplomacy and strategic affairs. He's been a member of Israel's Foreign Service since 1989 and has served in New York and New Zealand as well as within Israel. Since 2008, he has focused on the public diplomacy aspects of the Iranian crisis, work for which he received the Israeli Foreign Ministry Director General's Award for Excellence in 2012. From 1997 to 2001, Yaakov served as Consul for Media and Public Affairs at the Consulate General of Israel in New York, where he oversaw the operation of Israel's extensive public affairs and media relations apparatus. And he left the Consulate General of Israel to New York after being the ministry, he left for the Consulate General of Israel to New York after being in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Arms Control Advisor, serving prior to that as Deputy Ambassador to the Israeli Embassy to New Zealand in Wellington from 1992 to 1995. In addition to his distinguished diplomatic career, he has also included academic pursuits, and in the spring of 2013, he published a translated version of his Haifa University master's thesis analyzing the nuclear negotiation strategy of Iran's current president, Hassan Rouhani, something most pertinent for all of us today. He grew up in Queens, New York, received a BA in journalism and international relations from Syracuse University in 1982, after which he immigrated to Israel, where he served in the Israel Defense Forces, and he and his lovely wife, Ofra, who joins us here this evening as well, have been married for 27 years. I think maybe more by the time I'm reading this. Is that so? And they have 2 adult-age daughters. We are truly delighted to welcome him to our bima with these words, Baruch atah ba'ir u'baruch atah b'sadeh. May you be blessed in the city, and may you be blessed in the country. Baruch atah bevo'echa u'baruch atah b'tzeitecha. May you be blessed in all of your arrivals, and may you be blessed in your departures. Welcome.
Shabbat Shalom. Wow, I finally made it to Temple Israel. This is quite an honor for me, and the truth is, it's great to have waited for this so that my wife can be with me as well. She joined me a month ago, and she is my better half, and definitely deserves a place at this illustrious occasion. It's a pleasure to be here. We've had a tough few months. That would be an understatement. And whenever you have a tumultuous period, you try to grasp at the end of it one snippet, one image, one picture that stays in your mind for a very long time. Rabbi Friedman referred to 9/11, and I think many of us very easily connect with an image of that horrendous disaster. The truth is, I have had trouble since the end of our tumultuous summer grasping one picture. And the funny thing is, I have been asked many times to speak about what are my reflections of the Gaza campaign. Nobody's actually asked me about the image that sticks in my mind. So you get to be the first congregation, even though you haven't asked yet, for me to share some of those pictures. Because I think those pictures in my mind reflect the accumulation of what happened in July and August, and really before that in June, and even before that, beginning with the kidnapping of the 3 Israeli youths, the discovery that they were murdered, the murder of a Palestinian, and everything that happened after that. The first picture in my mind, and by the way, most of these pictures I never saw. That's probably not surprising in the age of the information overload. And the first picture also is not surprising because it's personal. It's my wife, Ofra, and my daughter, my younger daughter, Ya'ara, traveling in an Egged bus from Mivaseret Zion, where we made our home for 12 years, in the direction of Tel Aviv for a mother-daughter fun day at a spa. Suddenly, the bus stops near Yehud, a mile or two from Ben Gurion Airport. A rocket has hit the vicinity. The bus stops, and as my wife recounted, or I will remember the way she recounted it. In typical Israeli fashion, the passengers and the driver arguing with each other. Should we stop? Should we get off? Should we stay on? By that time, of course, the sirens had sounded, the 15 seconds were over, and life went on. They continued to Tel Aviv, and they had their fun mother-daughter spa day. Right, Ofra? Right, and it was great for them. And she wanted to go back the next day. The next image in my mind is one of 13 Palestinian children in Wolfson Hospital in Tel Aviv. There for heart surgery of some sort. Had been brought out of the difficult situation in Gaza and taken to an Israeli hospital for treatment. And in that same week, 13 Palestinian terrorists popped out of a tunnel on the Israeli side on their way to slaughter Israelis. And so we had 13 Palestinian children in an Israeli hospital and 13 Palestinian terrorists. And at that point, I had already asked myself, and it is a question I continue to ask myself, what will become of those 13 Palestinian children who had that surgery in the hospital? The third picture in my mind is one of a crew from the Israeli electricity company, guarded by IDF soldiers, fixing electricity grids running into the Gaza Strip, which were blown out by Hamas rockets. There are many, many other pictures in my mind, but I will end just with this one. A day spent at the Seeds of Peace camp in Maine. My wife, Ofra, and myself, surprised, I think, that was the sense we got, the administrators, the counselors, and the campers when we came to express solidarity with the wonderful work that they were doing up there in the camp. My wife speaks Arabic, and she spoke Arabic with many campers from the Middle East, from Egypt, from Afghanistan, from Gaza, and from the West Bank. And the exchange with them was clearly not political. It wasn't appropriate, and their children. But we spoke of the joy of living. A very interesting meeting with the Israeli delegation of campers, the biggest one, of course. They always like to go abroad. And the Israeli delegation was clearly not just Jews. There were Israeli Arab Christians there, and Israeli Arab Muslims there, and there were Druze there. And the counselors were not just Jewish either. And we spent a long time with them hearing about, first and foremost, their challenges in becoming a cohesive group before they were able to move into the dialogue with the rest of the camp. And when we just passed by a group of these campers from all over the Middle East, we got to know them a bit, superficially, of course. And one of the campers, an Egyptian girl, covered from head to toe, asked if she'd get her picture taken with us, which we did. And so I emerged from all these experiences in the summer with what I've started to call practical optimism. I think in the Middle East there's no other choice. The only alternative to that is abject pessimism. That will bring us nowhere. But, and there's always a but. In my mind, what happened in the last few months was Israeli Jews, Muslims, and Christians making a pretty great sacrifice to break a very dangerous paradigm that had developed in our part of the world, where we're an organization with two heads, I would say. One head in the direction of Palestinian nationalism, but unfortunately the other head in the direction of a jihadi orientation. Created a military garrison and essentially took 2 million Palestinians hostage. They were not to blame for what happened. They were helpless victims in what happened. And that paradigm cost, on their side, 2,000 people, many of whom, by the way, were combatants, we believe. On our side, 67 soldiers and 3 civilians, 1 a Muslim. And we did something that we did previously, maybe 10 years ago in 2004, and we said that the situation had just reached a point where we just have to choose, and we have to choose to defend our civilians. But now that we've broken the paradigm, which we had it in our capability to do, we now find ourselves in the twilight zone. And the twilight zone is that link between the old paradigm and the new one. I believe the new paradigm needs to include the following components. First and foremost, the Gaza Strip has to be demilitarized. And a responsible security force has to be introduced there to guard the borders with Israel, with Egypt, and the sea border. That component could very well look like the security cooperation we have with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, a security cooperation which has been sustained despite the volatility of the last 3 months. But there are other components which are necessary to be put in place, without which we will unfortunately have a recurrence of what we saw in the last few months. First of all, the second thing I guess would then be consolidating the convergence of interests which we haven't seen in a very long time between Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Egypt in the room, and many, many Sunni countries outside the room. Indeed, there are those who will claim that for the first time, the players on the ground took matters into their own hands to deal with their own problems and didn't necessarily seek out our friends in the West to solve our problems for us. At the end of the day, that is a positive development if we can sustain that. The third component is that there needs to be responsible reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. The Palestinians have every right to betterment, just like everybody else in the region. The raw materials that will flow into there very soon, the concrete, the cement, the metal, and everything else, needs to build hospitals, clinics, schools. One of the glaring distortions, I think, that we saw during the last few months was that when we heard about the places that Palestinians were going to seek shelter, they were never Hamas buildings, because the Hamas did not build anything to protect their people. And so the bottom line of that is betterment. There must be betterment for the Palestinians. And the fourth component, and this is something that's close to my heart, no less than the others, and that's the whole question of state sponsorship of terrorism. I've been involved with that issue for more than a decade. And I think we need to recognize that the Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and the Hezbollah in the north wouldn't have reached the strategic situation that they reached if it were not for the support of Iran. And I've watched Iran. I've watched Iran train them, finance them, arm them. And this is a challenge, no less than the others, for the international community, to make sure it doesn't happen again, to keep the state sponsors of terrorism away from Gaza. Now, as I said, Israel had the ability to break the paradigm. Israel does not have the ability alone to create the new paradigm. And therefore, we will require the commitment and the support of the international community as a whole, led by the United States of America, which gave us so much support in these very trying months, and we're incredibly grateful of that, in supporting Iron Dome and increasing the allocations for that. Beginning with that and ending with the very strong support for the dismantling of the Hamas and the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, and sharing the vision of the need for betterment for the Palestinian people. If we can get these four components in place, I believe, being a practical optimist, we will be in a better place as we move forward. Maybe I'll just end with this thought. We will have time to speak at the Oneg. The last image that I did see was a rally for solidarity for Israel here in Boston, where 3,500 people came out to express their support for a right to self-defense. And I looked in that group of people who came from all over the greater Boston area, and they were from all great age groups, and they were there for all sorts of different reasons. But the one common denominator was the outpouring of support for Israel. And that support for Israel at such a trying time, you have no idea how that fed into the resilience of our civilians on the ground to be able to hold the line, to keep at it, and to the extent that the government felt the job needed to be done, to get it done. And it made it easier, I think, for the government and for the military at some point to just stop and say, we're not going to gain anything by going further anymore, and we want to go back to normalcy. My prayer is a prayer for the new year, for Rosh Hashanah, that the support that you provided with us and the resiliency of our people on the ground will lead to betterment as we work together with the international community. Amen, amen. Thank you very much.
I don't know why people think they can't express their gratitude on Shabbat. There's no law against it. The Consul General has very graciously agreed to remain with us for our Oneg in the Levy auditorium, and we're going to invite all of you to join us there. Please take plates quickly, and if it's out that way, I don't know how it's set up, so that we get into that as quickly as we can. I'm going to ask you not to hold up the Consul General and his wife as we leave, because we would like to greet you in there rather than have him behind the lines here. Thanks. Shabbat shalom.